Have you ever thought of the impact that one decision can have on a family dynamics and healing? This topic, as well as understanding universal laws, the power of decisions, were some of the hot topics in today's episode with Cate Wilkes. Don't miss this enriching conversation filled with pearls of wisdom and practical life lessons. Would you like to think and grow rich? If so, keep on listening. This podcast is dedicated to those who have found their way from fear to freedom and for those who are considering undertaking this amazing journey. This is the Courage to Be podcast, and I am your host, Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I'm thrilled to share that I'm hosting a series on how people's lives have been influenced by the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you'd like to learn and apply how to think and grow rich, go to the show notes to get some wonderful free resources and join the Courage to Be community. I look forward to being your guide and mentor so you can transform your life. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And we are continuing with the Napoleon Hill series of the book Think and Grow Rich. And today we have Cate Wilkes with us. Welcome, Cate.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So good to be here with you. I'm excited about our conversation today.
I know, me too. So many golden nuggets are going to show up here. So talk to me about how you got exposed to the book Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah. So originally, my mentor, Bob Proctor, carried this little black book around with him everywhere. And he used to talk about reading every day from the same book. And that book was Think and Grow Rich. So I worked with him for a couple of years up until his passing last year, but I saw the impact of reading and studying versus just reading a book and putting it back on the shelf. He taught me the power of the principles that were in that book. And so I began to read it, but not until I joined the Napoleon Hill Institute did I really understand that integrating and applying the material was so much more powerful. And as I look back on my conversations with Bob, that's exactly what he did.
This is great. And so had you already read the book before meeting Bob Proctor, or that was the first time you read it and started applying principles?
I read it, but I would say not cover to cover. So I was more curious because to me, growing up, the paradigm of rich that I had growing up was people who had a lot of money. And so I was curious about the book. So I began to read parts of it, but never to really study it like I do today. Even with Bob, he would point out different sections and always talk about the decision chapter and how important it was to understand how to make a really good decision. And so at times during my work with him, I would read different pieces of that chapter, but again, not like I do today. Today, I just devour the material that's between those covers. I love it.
This is awesome. Let's talk a little bit about that, about decision making. I know that's an important principle to you that's from the book and from this material. What does decision mean to you, and why does that resonate so much for you?
You know, decision is kind of interesting. I'll step back to what Napoleon Hill calls the first step to riches, which is desire. And what Bob taught me, he said, you have to know what you want and why you want it. Not the how, but what you want and why you want it. And I've learned during my study in the decision chapter is that the reason it's important to know what you want and make a decision to go for that, to actually make a decision that says, yes, this I will do, is because every opportunity, the universe will move in your favor when you do that, number one. Number two, what happens when you make a committed decision is that it makes it very easy to say yes or no to opportunities. In other words, this is why successful people make decisions quickly and unsuccessful people make decisions slowly. So making a decision and changing your mind slowly really means that you are in harmony with what you want. You know what it's going to take to get what you want when it comes to you. So making that yes decision becomes very simple. Why he says unsuccessful people make decisions slowly and they change their minds quickly. This is what we call today the shiny object syndrome. It's the next best thing. So today I want to do this. Tomorrow I want to do this. And so we're changing our minds quickly we're confusing the universe. That universal energy that's come to us can't be channeled in a way that creates a powerful force. And so for me, decision really, it's the catalyst that starts the force in action.
Ooh, I love that. That's beautifully said. And I love that you're using the yes decision. But what happens when, I mean, because that's easier said than done. Like, say you're presented with, I don't know, you want to do a course or you want to do the trip you've dreamt of your whole life, and there's an opportunity. Someone said, oh, that trip's, there's an opportunity to go, I don't know, to Bali, and you've been dreaming about this your whole life, but it's very expensive. And the fears start creeping up. How do you help someone, or what are some of your tips that you could give to someone that really wants something, but they're starting to see those obstacles and the fears coming in, and then they start, it is a yes decision, but at the same time, they're being taken by that fear of what if it goes wrong?
Yeah.
What if I go bankrupt? What if I can't afford it? What if I fill in the blank?
Yeah. That's such a good question. And really, you're setting this up beautifully for a discussion, because fear, what is fear? Fear is a vibration of worry and doubt. When a person sits in that worry and doubt, it's based on an ignorance of the law, not understanding universal principles. So not stupidity, but just ignorance, not knowing that there are forces at work, unseen forces at work, that we can use to our benefit if we understand them. So for someone wanting to make a decision making, powerful decision making, comes from really understanding who we are and what we want. So in other words, if I really don't know myself, Tanya, it's going to be hard for me to say, that's what I want to do, because the thing that we really want to do is already in harmony with our higher self. So as we uncover the higher self, there's a driving force within all of us. And what happens most of the time is we say, oh, I want that. I want the trip to Bali. I want this. And then immediately the mind falls back on the old conditioning that says, but how are you going to do that? And when we fall back into the old conditioning, the only thing that we can create is more of the same result we already have. That's by universal law, because it's the thinking. The thinking is always the first cause. It's the primal cause. So if I'm thinking about, wow, like you and I were talking about a trip to Spain, a European trip, and how I feel like, okay, the year of 2024 is going to be my year of travel. I'm not just saying that. I'm actually envisioning myself like, is this what I really want? Would I love making a decision? So how do you make a good decision? How do you make a good decision when there's fear present, when there's doubt present, when things at the level of fact don't look like they're all going to come together? What we must realize, and this is again why it's so important to understand what we want first, what we must realize is that when we declare what we want, what is within us and what will come to us will allow us the path, will show us the path to be able to attain that or to achieve it. So if I make a decision that I want to travel to Europe or travel to Spain at a certain level of luxury, but today I have some kind of evidence that, okay, maybe I won't have the time. Maybe the extra dollars won't be there. If there's evidence today that I get in harmony with that says no, then my decision is not going to be a committed decision. But if I say, I'm going no matter what I am going, I will be there. These are the dates that I'm going. This is where I want to stay. And this is how I want to travel. These are the places that I want to see. Can you feel the difference in the energy? It's not a question of if or how, but most people, more than 95% of people, don't even start taking a step toward their dream because of the fear of making a decision and then having it not work out. What we have to realize is that making the decision doesn't mean that the path is going to be all green lights. Making a decision says, this is my goal. The path might change along the way, but this I will have. And Napoleon Hill talks about that in the chapter on organized planning.
I love this, Kate. Tell me a story, though, of maybe a moment that this happened to you, because it sounds like you're very present to this idea, to this principle of making a decision and you're very clear now. I can sense your confidence. I can sense your understanding of this material and how you're applying it in your life. But obviously there had to have been a moment prior to understanding all this that you might have encountered that decision making that was very scary for you, but you still did it anyway, and how that unfolded for you. Do you have any stories that you could share with
Yeah.
us?
I do have many stories. The one of the principles in Think and Grow Rich that I absolutely love is every adversity carries with it a seed or greater benefit, a seed of equal or greater benefit. And I love that because what it tells me is that in every adversity, there's born opportunity. So the situation that came to mind immediately when you asked me this question, Tanya, back in 2005, I made a decision to leave my marriage. I had an 8-year-old at the time. I knew he would be coming with me full time. And I was at a point in my career where for the first 5 years of his life, I stepped away from working outside the home. I wanted only to focus on him. He's my one and only child, and I had him later in life. So I knew what I wanted in terms of being present as a mother. So when circumstances were such that I took him and moved out, first of all, I had a job, but I had zero money that I could take with me. Okay. I had no access to any of the bank accounts at that time, which was news to me. But I made a decision. I made a decision that I was going to go back to work and that I was going to make it work. And I was going to create a life for this child where he had even more opportunity than I had growing up, that everything would be available to him no matter what, regardless of what the cost of it would be in terms of dollars. And so when I made that decision, I literally drove out, left the driveway of our family home, moved out, took him and a suitcase and the car. And that was it. I had no idea how I was going to put down the deposit for my rent or after school care. None of that was in place when I drove away. And so because I made a committed decision, I was looking for the opportunity. See, what decision does is it changes your view of life. It changes your sight. It changes what you hear, see, smell, taste, and touch because you're looking for everything that's in harmony with your decision. And so fast forward, I have to say everything that I needed came to me at the time that I needed or sooner. Everything, opportunity, job opportunities, after school care, support when I was traveling, everything came to me in droves, in even more abundance than I could ever imagine. And understanding that, I didn't understand these principles at the time, but I knew what drove me was the desire to create a better life for my son, to help him be in a position where he could see opportunities, where he could see healthy relationships, where he could have a broader view and a broader horizon for his future. So that was that's the first recollection I have, other than deciding to go to college and leaving home at 17 and not knowing how I was going to pay for college and how that all unfolded as well. But I think part of decision is resolve. Honestly, it's a resolve that says, you know what? There's no other option. In fact, decision itself means to cut away in Latin, to cut away all other options.
Amazing. And I can relate, not because I'm going through a divorce, but I'm curious for anyone that's listening that might be in difficult circumstances right now, because I do have some clients and friends that are going through a difficult moment where they're having to make some of these decisions, like you're saying, Cate, do I stay? Do I leave? There's like one foot in, one foot out, wanting to salvage the marriage, or maybe there's fear, but they know clearly that it's done. What was that final push for you to realize that I can't stay? I have to move no matter how scary, because that's scary, driving away in a car without knowing how you're going to pay the rent. I mean, you're applying faith, one of the other principles in the book, but because we tend to operate as human beings from a place of for certainty, like, unless I know the how, then I'm not going to leave the marriage. I know it's the better thing for me. I know I don't want to keep on being abused. I know I don't want to keep on living the life I'm living. I know you know all these things, but you're so scared or you're so frozen that you don't want to move forward because the uncertainty is there. So what would you say to someone that's in that position of just like, I don't think I have it in me? But you just mentioned resolve, and I am a big believer we all have that in us. And how do we tap into that, Cate?
Yeah, we really do. Well, I mean, the title of your podcast is brilliant, The Courage to Be. It's really understanding what you're willing to accept in life and what you're not. What's your standard? So when I was in the career world, I didn't get married till later in life, and then I had my son at 36. So I had a pretty good career run until I had him, and then I took some time off. And what I learned was that I had to have a standard of operating in myself. I had to have an acceptable level of behavior. We cannot, in fact, the truth is, Tanya, that we teach people how to treat us. Okay. We teach people how to treat us by the way we treat us. At that point, I was allowing the behavior to happen. I was allowing the conversation, to put me in a position where, okay, I was feeling small. I was feeling incapable. I was feeling disempowered. And I was allowing myself to be impacted and affected by the outside world. And something, when I looked at my son and I said to myself, something rose up in me. And I said, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable, because remember, in those early years, children are modeling. They don't understand right and wrong. They don't understand levels of standard. They don't know acceptable behavior versus unacceptable behavior. They do what they are shown. They act in a certain way based on what they see. And so there was something in me that said, this is not acceptable for my son to be in a position where one day he might be in a relationship like this. That was the defining factor. But I will tell you that before I made that decision, I did everything that I felt like I could to work within the relationship, to work within the marriage. And I'm not a marriage counselor by any means, but I do know that at some level, you have to become your own person, and you have to be in a place where you're empowered, where you feel empowered, and where you're supported in being who you were created to be. Because the essence of each one of us is to be celebrated. I'm firmly convinced that the essence of each one of us is to be celebrated. And so now I'll tell you another decision that I made, Tanya, that has transformed our whole family. Okay, because my ex-husband is remarried. He got remarried 2 months before my son got married. And I decided, when I heard that he was getting married, I decided that we were going to have the celebration of a lifetime at my son's wedding, that there was going to be no dissension, and that whoever she was, whoever he decided to marry, that I was going to welcome her into the family, that I put away all my anger, everything, resentment, everything that I was feeling. And I said, this is for the greater good. And the only way that I was strong enough to be able to do that is because I was working with a coach and a mentor. Okay, this is what Napoleon Hill talked when we went to the archives. He wrote that he wanted to have 5,000 coaches teaching this material. That's how passionate he was. But what I'm saying is that we can make a decision, and sometimes we make decisions based on our current situations, circumstances, and conditions. But we can, through the decision-making process, we can create an environment for healing for ourselves and for everybody around us. We don't have to carry that emotional baggage for the rest of our lives. And so when we had, even the day after the wedding celebration, the day after, we had a big family brunch, and some of my cousins were coming up to me and saying, oh my gosh, like, you guys are talking to each other. I said, yeah, I decided to leave the past in the past. That's the power of a decision. Because if I didn't make a decision, I'd be bringing that stuff up every chance I could. But because I made a decision in favor of the greater good, it's worked out for everybody. And I feel very fortunate to be in a position where I know this material. It's based on the book. It's available for everyone.
That is a beautiful story. I was getting teared up because how many couples end up in divorce? We have over 50% of divorce rate. And how different would our world look like if those couples that still have kids
so they have to be in each other's lives, could make those kind of decisions, Cate. I just have a client that's been going through that. Actually, it happened a couple of months ago for her, where the ex-husband was getting remarried. How was she going to approach that? And it's beautiful. You're such an example and inspiration to anyone that's going through something like that. And you don't even have to be going through a divorce, because we all have our family drama, but we can make those decisions of what we want that to look like versus accepting the circumstances that are, or what we've been taught, like, oh, you get divorced, then you have to get into this horrible battle and you have to hate each other, and et cetera, et cetera. So I want to commend you for your level of awareness, for being such an inspiration to so many people, and the way you're doing that, because the impact that you're having, you have no idea of the ripple effect. Like, how's your son looking at this? How's his wife looking at it? How's your ex-husband looking at it? How is, like, the ripple effect, you have no idea yet of how profound that might be from making that one decision. That's huge.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. It is interesting because we cannot make decisions for other people. We can't even have goals for other people. Like when parents say, I have a goal for my child to do this, they have a desire. Like I had a desire for my son to live a full, free life. I had a desire for him to go after whatever it is that he wanted to do in his life's work. And now I will say, he married a young woman who it was just a year in early November that they've been married, and they've known each other since third grade. Okay. They met at the school when I separated from my husband and moved to a different town. The school where they met was the school in that new town. They've been friends since they were in third grade. The destiny of his life has shifted. And I'm not saying that you have to leave your spouse in order to do that. What I'm saying is I followed what I knew inside of me was the right thing to do. I followed that. And that when I look at their relationship, and they were here for Thanksgiving, and I look at how they interact with each other, there's so much love and respect. They have a firm foundation of friendship. So for people that are in this situation now, I would say this, I've changed. I decided that I needed to change, that I was no longer going to live that life and accept that kind of behavior because I was accepting it. Okay. Everybody in our family, all the dynamics have changed, except for my former husband is the same individual. But because everybody else has shifted, he's beginning to shift.
I love it.
He's beginning to shift. So the one thing that I would say for anybody having, and this is just personal experience, again, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I would say, be certain of your decision, be certain of what you want, and make that decision based on a higher level of living, not running away from something, but you want to be pulled by something better. You want, before you take action, you want to define what is that. That's why Napoleon Hill talks about definiteness of purpose. What is the purpose in taking the action? Is it to run away from a situation? Is it to run from a circumstance? Or are you making that decision based on a desire for more? The first step toward riches, desire for more with a definite purpose and a definite chief aim. And although for me, my career took some twists and turns because I was in the financial industry during the credit crisis, and that happened. Listen, I got divorced in 2006. Okay. 2007, I bought a house, and 2008, the market crashed and I lost my job. The bank was sold. Talk about adversity. But I had a mortgage to pay and I had a son to take care of. And I worked 3 jobs for 6 months until I became an independent contractor. And that's how I stepped into global consulting. I had no idea that's where I was going, but I knew that there was a mission and there was a responsibility, and I was going to rise up. This is a message that we all need to hear, including myself, to continue every day to rise up, because there's always more. But if we're looking at the ground, Tanya, we can't see the sky. We can't see the blue sky of opportunity when we're looking down at our feet. And so I just really believe that everybody has, listen, I came from a family, my parents did the best that they could. They really did. But when my dad said that I was going to go to college, but he wasn't going to provide the means for me to do that. I decided to leave home right after high school. I left home at 17. And I said, you know what? I applied to the school, I got in, and somehow I'm going to pay for it. And it was the same situation, that determination that said, failing is not an option. It is not an option. I'm healthy and capable and I can work. And as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, I can do it, right?
I love it. Yeah. And it's, you can feel the energy of that resilience. We're going to take a moment and we're going to pause to share a little something, and we'll come back. And I want to tap into kids and how you raised your kid, because there was something that showed up for me there.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you've been enjoying this series of Think and Grow Rich on the podcast, I invite you to go to the show notes and download a free copy of the Think and Grow Rich book. You can keep it for yourself. You can dive deeper into the material, and you can start studying and learning what we've been talking about here. You see that other people have succeeded with these principles. So if you'd like to make a shift in your life, if you'd like to take your money income to the next level, make sure to book a call with me. If you're wanting things to change in your life, it all starts by making a decision and taking action. So just book your call by clicking on the link in the show notes. I look forward to supporting you in your journey.
Okay, so let's talk about kids. Your son, you said when you were, and before the divorce and you were making this decision, the kids absorb everything. They mimic their parents. And before we got on the recording, we were talking about this material going into schools and stuff, because I have a daughter too. I only have one kid. And I think it's so important when we have been given the gift and the opportunity, like Oprah says, once you know it, you can't unknow it. Now we know this material. Yes. How do we bring this to children, to teenagers? What are your thoughts, within the educational system, and how we can bring this type of material into children and teenagers?
Yeah, this is something, that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, Napoleon Hill says this in Think and Grow Rich, that this formula, he calls it a success formula, the 13 principles, but he says this formula must be in all of the public schools. And I believe that it should be in the curriculum in every grade, from kindergarten all the way up through high school, because those are the formative years. So, one of the ways that I bring it into the school systems is just through mentoring. Backing up, though, even to raising my son from the time he was born, there was a desire in me to raise the bar. Okay, I was one of 3 children. I was the middle of 2 boys. I was raised in a family where the boys had the opportunity. Okay, they were going to go on to be engineers and architects and all of that, and that they did. But for me, my dad kind of, I don't know, it was almost like he was like, just do this so you'll be able to, support yourself, almost like the least common denominator as I think back on it. And I think to myself, okay, he didn't know any better, right? My parents were immigrants. They came to this country. They worked very hard, and, they provided a good living, for a good standard of living for us, but it wasn't excessive. We never went on vacation. And I thought to myself, I am going to live a different life. And through the separation, having my son and understanding now I'm responsible for a human, I'm responsible for another human, and understanding that I wanted his life not to be easy, but I wanted him to have opportunity. And I wanted him to understand the principles of the character of what it took to rise up to opportunity. And this is what Napoleon Hill talks about when he talks about excellence, that we rise up to the opportunity. The opportunity doesn't come down to where we are, and in the energetic world, the law of vibration, everything that we want is at a higher vibration. Otherwise, we would have it. And so it's up to us to do the work to raise up to that vibration. So I remember when it was the first weekend after I had gone back to work, I was out with my son, and I had this sense, it was almost like a voice inside of me said, everything is going to be okay. You've got this. And even though on the outside world, it didn't feel like that, because at that point I was still living paycheck to paycheck. Even though it didn't feel like that, I chose that. I loved the feeling of knowing that it was all going to work out. And so I allowed myself to rest in that place and then just make one decision after the other as they came up. So one of the things that we think about, or one of the things that's easy to fall into, Tanya, is that we believe we have to know all the steps. We have to know how it's all going to work out. We have to know that all the lights are green from the time we leave the driveway till the time we get to the destination. That's not real life. And Warren Buffett even talks about this. He talks about how a life lived with ups and downs is an accelerated life, because the higher the uphill climb, the faster, the acceleration is down the mountain once you get to the other side. Well, what's in between those two steps is the building of the inside of who we are. It's the fortitude, it's the desire, it's the higher self-image. It's saying, you know what, I deserve more in life. And going back to the title of your podcast, the courage to be that person, the courage to be that person. I remember when I started working with Bob Proctor, it was not easy for me to go back and be a beginner. I had attained a really great level of success in my corporate career, and understanding that I had to be a beginner to be able to absorb this material was so foreign to me. I thought to myself, yeah, I understand it. And intellectually I did, but the intellectual understanding of this material is not what gets the results. And I had to chip away at that ego. And I had people around me that were chipping away at that ego. And it was almost like, how a diamond in the rough has to be polished and pressed. And the pressure has to be there in order for the shine to come to the surface, right? That's how it is for humans. Like if we're never under pressure in our lives, if we're never in a place of adversity, how do we ever understand how to rise up? How do we learn the skill set, to staff the toolbox of life that says that we can overcome by making a decision and developing that resolve? That's what creates the resiliency.
Amazing. You're so wise. You have so many things in you as you're explaining this, and you explain it so beautifully, Cate. What can parents do, as a parent of a young one myself now, what can we do as parents to teach our kids who are our future some of these principles, or what would be like the main principles to teach them at this age?
Yeah.
My daughter, for example, is 10, but it doesn't matter. I don't even think age is relevant, because you can teach some of these principles even when they're younger, like what you said, kindergarten and moving forward.
Yeah.
What are some tips you could give us parents, since you've already done it with your own son?
Yeah. Well, I would say start right now, start today. The best thing I've always, again, this was just a way of being that came to me. I've always invested in myself. I've always had a desire for growth. I've always had kind of an inkling that I knew there was more, and I wanted to meet up with that more. And so the very best thing a parent can do is really understand who they are. This is why working with a coach or a mentor is essential if we want to grow in life. It's absolutely essential. It's a non-negotiable. Like I invested a significant amount of money when I left the corporate world at the end of 2018. I left the corporate world. I was taking care of my parents, making sure that they had the proper care. My older brother had passed away very unexpectedly. He was doing a lot of that care and facilitation for them. And so stepping into that role, it was foreign to me. I had to rise up. And so to keep my mind going, I decided to start investing in personal development. At the same time, I had team members from my corporate role. I had team members calling me to say, would you continue to coach me? Would you continue to help me? And of course, the answer was yes. So by de facto, I got into that. But I learned, what I realized, Tanya, was the higher they rose, the higher I had to rise in order to lead them. Like I had to invest in myself. But what happened when I did that, even though my son was already out of college at that point, he graduated in 2019. So he was in his senior year. Even though he was at that place in life, I could still pass on the lessons. See, our kids are watching us every single day. I remember, I'll share a quick story. This is when we were still living in the family home. I think my son was probably 5 or 6 years old, and it was a beautiful fall day. I had the windows open. We had a great big yard, and he came in and asked me a question. And I don't even remember what the question was, but I said no. The only thing I remember about that whole situation was he ran back out to his little friends in the front yard. And he said to me, or he said to them, he said, my mom said no, but give her a little bit of time. She'll say yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, he has picked up a pattern that my first answer is no. And then I acquiesce and I just lean in and give in to what he wants. And I thought to myself, that's going to change. So, as a parent, I had to let my yes be yes and my no be no. And I had to realize that my first and foremost responsibility was not to be his friend. It was to form him and mold him and shape him according to the way that he was gifted. And, the Bible talks about this in the way, raise up a child in the way he or she should go. I had to be firm in myself, in my own knowing, before I could teach that to him. And one of the things that I see so often, because I do mentor high school students now, one of the things I see so often is that the kids are in charge in the home. You can tell by the way that they talk. But what they need is guidance and direction. What they need is love and boundaries. And what we as parents must understand is that the firmer, here's how I thought about it with my son. I thought if I was really strict with him, and I looked for every opportunity to say yes, but there were times when I said no. And I felt like if I was strict with him and firm with him, I could always ease up. But if you have no boundaries and no rules in the house, oh yeah, good luck trying to get that back in, rein that in, right? So being an example, understanding that our growth is essential for the growth of our children. As we develop, they will develop. And then understanding what is my role as a parent? What is my role as a mother? Yes, to love and nurture him and to teach him about the softness in life. But in my circumstance, I also had to be the dad. And I also had to be the disciplinarian. And there were times when I said no, because there was a lesson in the no, not to say no for no's sake, but there was a lesson. There was kind of a waiting period and a maturing that had to happen in him before I could say yes to what he wanted. And so that's what I would say, Tanya. I mean, I'm passionate about this because I really believe that the future of the world, the future of society is in the hands of parents right now. The decisions we make, what we choose to believe. Bob taught me, he said, most people don't think. Most people have a lot of mental activity going on, but they're not thinking about what they're doing. And, maybe a whole nother topic, we could talk about thought and beliefs, because a belief is just something you think over and over again. If you think you're a bad parent, you're going to develop that belief and then you're going to act from that belief. But if you believe, you know what, I'm not a perfect parent. None of us are perfect parents, but I know I'm doing the best that I can and I'm learning along the way. And as I'm learning, I'm shifting the way that I do things for the betterment of my son, for the betterment of my household, for the betterment of everybody that my son will touch and everybody that I will touch. So it's just that constant thirst of there is more. In every one of us, there is a desire for more. What happens for most people, especially when they get to be adults, is they've been beaten down by life so many times. Or they say, you know what, that was good enough for me. It's good enough for my kid. Well, what does good enough mean? What does that even mean? Good enough compared to what?
Yeah. And it goes back to the thinking. Are we thinking, why are we saying these things? Thank you for this, Cate. You have so many pearls of wisdom as we're speaking here. I want to take another little pause and we'll come back because I want to ask you about mentoring and coaching.
If you've been enjoying this series of Think and Grow Rich on the podcast, I invite you to go to the show notes and download a free copy of the Think and Grow Rich book. You can keep it for yourself, you can dive deeper into the material, and you can start studying and learning what we've been talking about here. You see that other people have succeeded with these principles. So if you'd like to make a shift in your life, if you'd like to take your money income to the next level, make sure to book a call with me. If you're wanting things to change in your life, it all starts by making a decision and taking action. So just book your call by clicking on the link in the show notes. I look forward to supporting you in your journey.
Let's talk about coaching and mentors. I'm a big believer like yourself. My life has exponentially grown from the moment that I've invested in myself because it costs money to hire a mentor, to hire a coach, to be in that. And there's people that poo-poo this, like I've had conversations with people that have not had mentors or coaches, maybe because they haven't seen the value in it, maybe because they haven't experienced it. And they're like, oh yeah, life coaching, or yeah, here we go, the coaches or whatever. What's your thought and your experience about working with hand in hand with a coach or mentor? And why is that so necessary for anyone that wants to keep on growing and hopefully quantum leaping when they're doing this?
Yes. This is a great question, Tanya. I'll share what Bob shared with me. He said, we all have blind spots. We all have blind spots. He said, if you are capable of achieving what you want to achieve on your own without the help of a coach or a mentor, he said, you'd already be there. Why wouldn't you? If it's something that you want, like, why would you not have it? The only reason you don't have it is because your consciousness is not at the same level in harmony, vibrational harmony with the thing that you want. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is our awareness. It's our ability to wake up to a greater understanding of who we are and what we can accomplish. What a coach or a mentor does is that person shines the light of awareness on a blind spot. So if I'm working with you and you're coaching me, I might be talking away, telling you about a situation or telling you I want to accomplish something. You're going to see something in me that I'm not seeing, because you have a different perception. You're seeing through different eyes. You're seeing with a different level of understanding. And so that's what a coach does. A coach, to me, evocative coaching is the most powerful coaching. And that's where, Tanya, if you were coaching me in an evocative manner, you're bringing more out of me than I could ever bring out of myself, versus directive coaching. And there are some cases where directive coaching is necessary, maybe sometimes in a business environment where you want to give them direction to go do or take an action. Like, for example, with my clients, I do direct them to create a morning routine, and I help them create a morning routine that works for them. So there are some places where, I'm sure you have as well, you're going to direct your coach or direct your client as a coach. But the essential part of working with a coach or a mentor, particularly someone who has something that you want, if they've already attained something that you're looking to accomplish or to have or to be in your life, then the only way to get there and the fastest way to get there is by working with a coach or a mentor.
So agree with this. And I love how you explained it so eloquently with shining the light, that blind spot. I just love that. I'm going to have to make a quote out of it or something, Cate. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
And can you go deeper into the evocative coaching and bringing more out of you versus the directive coaching and that distinction between both of them?
Yeah. So, for example, if I asked you, say you came to me and you said, I wanted to change careers. This is very common now. People are looking to change careers. There's, I'll say, a movement of particularly people that have worked in the corporate environment for maybe 10 or 20 years. They're feeling that sense of dissatisfaction. They're feeling that longing for more. And so typically, if somebody calls me, the first question I'm going to ask them is, what have you thought of? What do you want? Well, I don't know. Well, you know what you don't want. So you know what you do want. What would be the polar opposite of what you're doing now? Take one component of what you're doing that you don't like, and what would be the polar opposite? Well, I don't know. See, this is the default. So it would be very easy for me to say, well, Tanya, I think you should do X or Y or Z, because I see gifts and talents in you that I know that you don't see right now. So I think you should do this. That would be a directive form of coaching. But if I said to you, Tanya, let's sit with this for a minute. Let's take a closer look at what you're doing now. What are the pieces of what you do now that absolutely drive you, that thrill you, that light you up? Let's take a minute and think about that. So essentially, I'm creating the space for this person to kind of open up. Because remember, when people are feeling a longing or a discontent, they're usually contracted. They're usually closed up because there's a tension, there's a resistance involved in that energetically. So in order to release the creativity, to release the dream, to release what they want, there's an aliveness that comes from an evocative situation because it's their own awareness that grows through that. It's their own realizations that grow through that. If I tell you what to do, there's no growth in that. You might have to gain a skill to go do the thing I'm telling you to do. But when you become aware of it yourself, you never can go back when you become aware.
I love it. I love it. That's so great. Where can people find you, Cate?
Oh, gosh. At this point, I don't have a website. I just drive people to LinkedIn. You're welcome to message me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm starting to do more and more there. I do, it's interesting because my clients are coming to me by referral, but I want to do more with children. I want to do more in the school systems, bringing the Think and Grow Rich program, the mentorship into the school systems can be transformational. But I would say to all the parents, start now, start today. It's time.
I'm getting goosebumps just hearing it. It's almost like you're giving me the message with it. And yes, if you're a listener and you are involved with schools or with children, definitely reach out to Cate. We'll put her LinkedIn connection on the show notes. And as we're wrapping up, what's one thing that our listeners can do to live a life with more courage, Cate?
To live a life with more courage, I would say this, Tanya, when we get quiet for a moment, a lot of times it's in the shower, because maybe, especially if you're a mom, that might be the only time you have peace. But there's a moment throughout the day where you connect with your higher self. And the way that I know that's true is that for every one of us, we're seeking more. We're designed that way. And if there's something that you've been wanting to do, take the first step. Take the first step. If you've been wanting to work with a coach, call Tanya. If you've been wanting to create something new, if you've been wanting to start your own business, whatever it is that you're wanting to do, know that the solution is already here. The only gap that you have to fill is in your level of awareness. So Bob he had a slide. Bob Proctor was a brilliant teacher in this material, and he had a slide and he would draw a star on the lower left corner of the slide and a star in the upper right corner. And he would say the only thing between where you are right now and where you want to be is making a decision to decide that today is your day. It's time.
Wow, I want to tear up, Cate. This is brilliant. I love everything that you've gifted us with your knowledge. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. This has been so much fun, Tanya. Thank you so much. You're a blessing to me.
Thank you.
I am so grateful that you joined me today. If you enjoyed it, there's one thing I'd like you to do. Click on the follow button so you don't miss a single episode. Leave me a rating and a review, and please share. As my way to thank you, email us a screen grab of your review at the email in the show notes, and we will send you a free Crafting Your Future guided visualization, which is so simple to do with outstanding results. It will empower you and give you the confidence to attract and create the life you've always desired. See you in our next episode.